Today is Juneteenth, a holiday to commemorate the day that the last slaves in Texas were told they had been freed.
So this morning we have Professor Angela Schwendiman from Eastern Washington University as the Director of Africana Studies to tell us more about the history of the holiday and how it's really grown in popularity across the country.
Yes, it's wonderful to be here. Thank you, first of all.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'd love for people to know really about the relevance of Juneteenth. Many people know that, General Gordon Granger moved in Galveston and liberated, said, hey, the war ended in April, but now you guys are actually free. And so this is the longest standing African-American holiday for that reason. But the history behind it is a long one.
Sure.
Really, we have to look at, I like to begin, why it was so significant that President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, which really was a turning point for the Civil War, in the sense that it rallied blacks. Okay, you had the Battle of Antietam, where you have 23,000 men who died on the north side, and it wasn't really a win so much as they were able to hold, the Confederates off. And so we thought we need something that's going to galvanize people and give us an idea of what this war is about, not just to preserve the Union, but to end slavery. So that resonated with blacks. So he said, okay, in January 1, 1863, you guys are free. Of course, the Confederates didn't acknowledge that. But for African Americans, 200,000 of them are going to, rally and start fighting for the Union. It was a turning point for the Union, okay, and gave them a purpose. We're going to get our freedom. We're going to be perceived as Americans, which is what they really wanted. All right, so now, after that, you have Gettysburg. 55,000 Americans are lost there. It was a horrific battle, the bloodiest one. And he comes back again, President Lincoln, and he says, you know what, this is about saving our democracy, seeing that if we can have a government of the people, by the people, for the people. And blacks very much saw themselves as a part of that. So when the war finally ends, they thought, this is it, we're going to be recognized as Americans. People were telling, Frederick Douglass, oh, you guys need to be recognizing July 4th. It's the Independence Day. He goes, but this isn't our Independence Day when you have 4 million, 4 million people who are still enslaved. So this idea of really being American and yet not being a part of America in terms of being able to enjoy all the rights and privileges that come with being American. And people understood this, and what I mean by this is, Thomas Jefferson in 1776, he's going to write the Declaration of Independence, and he's going to say that, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and you have these inalienable rights you can't be separated from, and yet here you have all these millions of people who are enslaved. And that goes back to something that was understood years before. Over in England, in 1772, people are arguing in what was now called the Somerset Principle. Okay, it was a court case over in Somerset, where Lord Somerset, where he was saying, okay, do they have a right to own slaves? Where does this idea, this concept come of slavery? You can only have slavery if you have laws in place. So the reason why this became an issue is because you had international laws, and of course America wanted people to respect their cargo coming out of Africa on the international laws, the Magna Carta that they had, that people would respect each other's rules and laws. And England is saying, well, wait a minute, this whole idea of self-ownership, we are owners of ourselves, and this is something that's God-given. You actually have to have laws in place to take that away. So the natural state, this is what Americans were saying, the natural state and condition of blacks was slavery. And they're saying, no, the natural state and condition of man is self-ownership. You actually have to have laws in place to take that away. So here you have Thomas Jefferson just, 4 years later, saying you have these inalienable rights. Well, that was based on this idea that these rights were only given to men from European descent. Okay, so constantly having to define themselves, people, if you are not European, that these actually belong to us too. That's how blacks felt in America. So they had a lot in the game when it came to not just, you know, the Revolutionary War, which they thought they were promised then they were going to be liberated. That didn't happen, right? And then the Civil War, this time you have a president who uses his authority, right, as during war, because he could make that executive order, all right, to say, okay, you're going to be free. Of course, that was during wartime, so it was going to take a constitutional amendment to make it stick. So that's why the 13th Amendment, you know, that says, okay, slavery now is no longer something that can be practiced here in America. And then the 14th Amendment saying that, you know, you have rights protected for everybody, and then as civil rights, equal protection under the law, and then the 15th Amendment that men could actually vote. Those were critical amendments, but even then, we couldn't guarantee that freedom. So first time, you know, they're able to do that, you know, with the beginning of these recognition of Juneteenth and the celebration. 12 years they'll enjoy this kind of respite where the federal government sent troops down to the South to protect blacks. But once that period ends, okay, the black codes come. Then you have Plessy versus Ferguson in 1896 that says, you know, separate but equal. You have the convict leasing program. If they cross the street or do something illegal, now they can be put in prison. And the state is negotiating with companies, you know, to lease these convicts so they could get as close to slavery as possible. So it really doesn't end until the civil rights movement, 99 years after the Civil War ends, right, where we say, okay, now we're going to abolish all these laws that separate us socially. Okay, now you can travel, you can go to any space, more than just drinking from any water fountain, right? But just think, trying to travel with your family, trying to live, all right? So to make us equal in social spaces, in 1965, the Voting Rights Act. The last law to come down that was a vestige of slavery is marriage, because you could not marry outside your race. And that's how they were able to separate the races, right, and say, okay, this is the population that's going to be enslaved, this one is not. And so if you had one drop of black blood in you, you were considered black. That doesn't change legally until 1967.
Wow. Professor, we are running out of time. You can go on for this because you are very knowledgeable. We appreciate you. You know, one of the things I like to keep it real on the show, obviously, I asked Channing just yesterday, Channing, do we say celebrate Juneteenth? You know, let's talk about the tone real quick. We got 30 seconds. So can you talk about how you can participate in Juneteenth? Maybe if you don't know a lot about it, or participate in some of the things going on around town.
Yeah, I know the MLK Center is doing a lot of events. People are being recognized for, you know, their contributions to Black history and their contributions in service to the community. There's barbecues, there's parades. All of these things that you would think, you know, this is a real celebration, and this is a time of unity and coming together. This history is our history, and the fact that it's a troubled one, we shouldn't, you know, the main thing is that we recognize that this is a part of who we are, and it actually helps to overcome feelings of cultural trauma and alienation when you say, okay, yeah, this did happen, but we are American, which is what this is really all about. Our paths to being recognized as American, fully realized as American, have been very different, but this is a part of our American story.
Yeah.
So we should all celebrate it.
That's
Absolutely.
right.
Well, Professor, thank you so much for joining us this morning and really breaking down the history for everyone here on the show. We appreciate your time, and hey, happy Juneteenth, everybody.